Last week I was in Japan, uh, as was the president of Thousand Harbours Zen, Jennifer, now Koe. And part of what we were doing there was visiting Yoshitani Roshi's temple. Yoshitani Roshi is the teacher who came here in July to perform the opening ceremonies for Sensoji, for this little temple of ours. His temple was celebrating 450 years, and as part of that, there were a number of events, and we got to be part of it. So there was the kind of outward facing part of that, a lot of serving local people, a lot of performing ceremonies for an audience. And then part of the gift of that is that there are these conversations that just happen in between, in the back. And I wanted to share one. It went by very quickly, but it got stuck in my head, and I've found it useful ever since. At one point, we were having a meeting about the following day's ceremonies, and I don't even remember what someone said, but they used the word atarimae. And atarimae, it, I'll explain it more, but it means something like of course. And Yoshitani Roshi stopped and he said, the world of atarimae is the world of Zen. And he talked about that for just 30 seconds, and then we moved on with the meeting. But I found myself thinking about it later that day, and thinking about it the next day, and thinking about it on the long flight home. And I thought I would try to unpack that a little bit. It seems worth it. There are two words that he used in that conversation. One is atarimae and one is tozen. Both of them function as adjectives, but both of them have this feeling of course. Um, like if you stub your toe and you say, "Oh, my toe hurts," well, we could say, "Well, that's atarimae because you stubbed your toe. Of course, it hurts, right? That's the nature of it." But it isn't used in the sense of course. It's like saying, "Yeah, that's like that. That's an of course thing, right? It's a matter of course. We just know that." So Yoshitani Roshi said, "Well, that's the world of Zen." And what he was talking about was that so much of our reality is, of course, right? As we move closer to winter, it gets colder outside. And I don't know about you, but I complain about it a lot. The people who live with me know. I wake up, I look at the temperature, I tell them all what the temperature is. I complain that today this is the temperature when the temperature could be warmer, because wouldn't that be nice? And then I step outside and I say, oh man, because I really don't like the cold. I never have. But the fact is, it's getting closer to winter. So, of course, it's cold. I can complain about it, and I do. But if I catch myself complaining about it and I say to myself, yeah, it's November, of course it's cold, there's something that pivots for me a little bit. And I recognize, at least for a moment, that whether I like it or not, the world isn't broken. The world is doing what the world does. And in November, what the world does is it gets cold. To say that the world of Zen is the world of course it is. is in part to recognize that so much of what we do day to day is to treat the world as if the world is broken, as if this moment is broken, as if the thing that we are encountering is somehow other than what it should or could be. When in fact, the entire Buddhist tradition is primarily dedicated to pointing out that this is in fact the way the world could or should be in this moment. So much of Buddhist teaching is about what we would call human nature. We say, all my past and harmful karma born from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion. That these are the three poisons. Greed, hate, and delusion. Attachment, aversion, and ignorance. That all the mistakes we make, all the harm that we cause in the world stems from these three things. That they're constantly there, and they're built in. This idea of course, it adds another layer to it. Because we do get it. You know, we can play this game. We can look at any kind of harm, and then we can say, well, is this an attachment one? Is this an aversion one? Is this an ignorance one? Right? Keep it kind of removed. But another way to do this is to look at what's happening right in front of me. This thing that I don't want to have happening. This thing in human behavior that I find so disappointing or so heartbreaking. And before I fight back, and before I say, oh, I can't believe you're acting this way. Oh, this is shocking. To in fact settle into this other part of me that understands, oh, this isn't shocking. This isn't shocking at all, because I understand that we operate through attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And that what I'm looking at is an extension of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Oh, there it is again. Okay. I saw this coming because I saw a human being coming. I saw this coming because I turned on the news knowing that the news would be about human beings. And whenever I see human beings, I see these things. As I was thinking about this today, I was asking myself, if I talk about this topic, is it going to sound defeatist? And I think maybe to some. But if it does, it's just because Buddhism sounds like that. In the same way that Buddhism is so committed, has always been so committed to saying, oh, by the way, you're going to grow old. And you're going to get sick and you're going to die. And this is true of everyone you've ever known and everyone they will ever know. And we can call that defeatist. But I think defeatist suggests that there's a battle we could have in which that's not the case. And we're losing that battle. And I think what this tradition has always been saying is, there is no battle. We're all going to get sick, and we're all going to get old, and we're all going to die. We don't have to like it. We don't have to embrace it. But rejecting it is a kind of indulgence in ignorance. Rejecting it positions us outside. Rejecting it feeds a narrative in which this moment was supposed to be another way, which is the definition of dukkha, which is the definition of suffering. It's always been that the next moment might be a different moment. It doesn't have to be like this one. But this moment actually has to be like this one. Because it can't be another moment. What this little teaching says is it's not just that this moment has to be this moment, which is hard. It's also that this moment makes sense on a basic level. This moment makes sense. The suffering that we experience ourselves makes sense. The suffering that we watch others experience makes sense. In many cases, it's not that it wasn't avoidable. But the causes and conditions of it were always going to be there. Because they always have been there and they always will be there. And right now, those causes and conditions coming together look like this. And it's not a mystery, and it doesn't mean the world is broken. And though there are problems we can solve, there are other problems that we can't. And so we see that suffering and we try to treat that suffering, understanding that it comes from something that's not going to go away. And we see our own frustrations with the cold. And I can wear more layers. I can heat up the car. I can do all sorts of things. But this part of me that always wants it not to be cold, that's just pre-installed. When I recognize that, I can put it down. What do they say? It's a feature, not a bug. This is really simple. And as it was presented to me, like I say, it was a 30-minute comment to the side. But it's one that's left me for the last week, noticing all these moments in the day when some part of me is saying, that's wrong. And then catching how so many times I can follow that up with, but of course it's like that. And in doing that, I can kind of let go. So I offer it up to you. And that's where I'll stop.